American Morning, the most news in the morning, period. Weekdays 6 Eastern.
You say that the legislative process around this bill was, quote, atrocious. President Obama, when he was a candidate on the trail, pledged that the public would have 5 days to review legislation online before he signed it. And of course, as we all know, this bill was more than 1,000 pages long. You said your staff did not have a chance to read any of it until after midnight the night before, and that there were only 5 hard copies available. What was going on?
There were 5 copies available to the House and I think 5 to the Senate. And that wasn't available until the House opened at noontime. So, no, it essentially was not available to us. And who could stay up all night and read 1,000 pages? So obviously it was done, like business as usual. Things have been going on like this for a long time. But this one was a little bit worse, and it was bigger than usual. So it was not a very good day for America.
So besides the problems that you have with how it went down, you also have major policy concerns and differences with what you think this stimulus will do. You say that you just don't think it's going to stimulate the economy, that it's going to actually prolong the agony. Why do you feel that way?
Well, this is the whole thing. It was a bad process, but if you come to the conclusion that it's a negative, it's really a sad day. Because we got into our mess by spending too much money, running up too much debt, and printing too much money. And that's exactly what we're doing. We're printing money and running up debt. This bill was equivalent to what we had spent prior to 1980. The national debt was $800 billion in 1980. We had to raise the national debt this time with this bill by another nearly $800 billion. So it's a process that will delay the recovery. We won't have the correction, and we will drive ourselves into depression the way we're going. So that is our real problem.
Well, I want to ask you about a couple of things.
Unfortunately.
There's stimulus in the tax credits, right? Because when people get to keep a little bit more of their own money, they spend it. A third of this is tax cuts.
Yes, and if if that was the only thing we were doing, that would be fine. But you really should do that with cutting spending too. I mean, just to explode the deficit. This has been the theory by supply-siders for a good many decades, and they've compounded our problems by setting the stage for conservatives running up the debt. So you cut taxes. I always vote to cut taxes, but I always vote to cut the spending too. And I think the most vulnerable place to cut spending would be overseas spending. To run our empire, we spend $1 trillion a year. We need to cut spending and cut taxes and get the control of the money back into the hands of the people and out of the control of the Congress, out of the control of the Federal Reserve System. Then we will have a recovery.
I want to ask you about this, though. What about the fact that we do have a crumbling infrastructure in many places, and that, if they're going to spend this type of money, at least spend it on something that will, A, I mean, they talk about shovel-ready projects, put some people back to work now, and B, make things better for the future?
Yeah, it wouldn't be the perfect way to do it under our constitutional system, but under today's conditions, if you cut, all these building projects over in Iraq and around the world, yes, bring that money home, save some of it, put it against the deficit, and use it in the infrastructure. That would be okay as an interim. But just think of how many bridges we pay to blow up around the world. Then we go and we pay to rebuild them, and then the money gets lost in corruption overseas. So I would say yes, we could have some infrastructure rebuilt in this country, but at the rate we're going, we're just throwing more money at it. We don't change any policies, whether it's the welfare policy or it's the warfare policy. The policies always remain the same. Either party's in power, and right now the Republicans are doing a much better job. But all I got to say is, where were we for the past 8 years? We contributed to this problem, and that's why our credibility is low. But what we need to do is just look to the Constitution, follow the rules, and we would come up with all the answers that we needed.